You are all second-generation disciples. When I establish my own sect, all of you will lead the disciples alone. Therefore there will be no competition between you for now. You have to help each other, understand? Zhou Xuanji looked at all the disciples and smiled. He looked young, but he was already quite dignified. Apart from his cultivation level and aura, it was also related to the tyrant imperial ring on his finger. Understood. The 82nd generation disciples shouted in unison, all of them looking excited. Zhou Xuanji's words made their blood boil. Establishing a sect. They were going to be doyens. When Zhou Xuanji became the top cultivator in the world, they would also ascend with him. Chang'e, come with me. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand. After that, he leaped up and soared into the clouds. Lin Chang'e followed closely behind. Ning Zifeng snorted lightly, but the corner of his mouth was raised slightly. Finally, an opponent came. They could spar often in the future. He wanted to be the most powerful sword cultivator after Zhou Xuanji. On a cliff that was a few hundred meters away, Hao Yin Boar King, Dade Bear Monarch, and the other 8th-ranked demons were looking down. Looking at these energetic disciples, they looked at each other in dismay. I feel that we cannot relax. If they surpass us in the future, Hao Yin Boar King swallowed his saliva and said. These disciples' learning and comprehension abilities were too powerful. They tried to memorize the 100-star sky-covering formation, but they were not as fast as these disciples. They had to watch them practice a few times before they could memorize it. Jingtian Eagle said with a cold face, yes, we must not embarrass the 4 mountain guarding kings. 4 mountain guarding kings. This was the title that Zhou Xuanji gave them. As the name suggested. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji brought Lin Chang'e to the top of the mountain. Lin Chang'e was stunned. The stars hung above his head, as though he could touch them with his hand. The awe he felt was indescribable. He noticed Yan Xianghua and Zhou Xiaoqi, the top cultivator of the evil sects, the legendary divine beast Qilin. He was shocked in his heart. As for Jiang Shui and Daoya Old Man, he ignored them. Since you chose to take me as your master, I will not mistreat you. I will now teach you the Hegemon Sword Emperor's inheritance. Zhou Xuanji turned around and said to Lin Chang'e. He wanted to teach the sky-dominating divine sword to this brat. Now, the sky-dominating divine sword was not his most powerful sword technique, so it was fine to teach it to him. With Lin Chang'e's talent, it would take him at least a few decades to master the sky-dominating divine sword. If it were an ordinary person, he would not be able to master it in his lifetime. Lin Chang'e heard him and opened his eyes wide. His breathing hastened and his heart beat rapidly. Zhou, Master, is what you said true? He asked carefully. He felt as though a pleasant surprise had fallen on his head. Zhou Xuanji took out the dog-culling sword and said, the Hegemon Sword Emperor's inheritance is his sword and sword technique. I will not give you the sword, but I can give you the sword technique. This sword technique is called the Sky-Dominating Divine Sword. Have you heard of it? Sky-Dominating Divine Sword. Lin Chang'e swallowed his saliva and replied, I've heard of it. In the Hegemon Sword Sect's ancestral shrine, there is an ancient record of the sky-dominating divine sword. Legend has it that our ancestor became unrivaled with this sword technique. Zhou Xuanji nodded and began swinging his sword, displaying the sword moves of the sky-dominating divine sword one by one. Lin Chang'e watched intently, afraid that he would miss any detail. Far away, Xian Xianghua opened her eyes and smiled inwardly. This brat really knows how to win people's hearts. After that, she continued to recuperate. Jiang Shui glanced at Zhou Xuanji but did not pay much attention to him. She continued to listen to Daoya Old Man's divination. One had to admit that the exquisite sword mind's talent was indeed domineering. Lin Chang'e had a photographic memory. Zhou Xuanji only demonstrated it once and he memorized all the sword moves. Then he began practicing with his sword. Zhou Xuanji watched from the side and felt satisfied. When Lin Chang'e mastered the sky-dominating divine sword, he would become one of Skyfall's most powerful cultivators. 2 hours later, Lin Chang'e descended the mountain excitedly. Zhou Xuanji asked him to stay with the second-generation disciples so that they could bond more easily. Night fell. Zhou Xuanji began cultivating the world Buddha art by the cliff. He had a premonition. He was about to master the second-level world reincarnation. As for how soon it would be, it could be a few months or a few years. But it would not be more than 10 years. Life returned to normal. Everyone was working hard on their cultivation. But the good times did not last long. One day after a month, thousands of cultivators surrounded Skyfall. Even the weakest cultivator was at astral projection level 5, and there were 3 great realization cultivators. The leader was a man in a purple robe. He had a medium build and looked ordinary, but there was a small flame levitating between his brows. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 273. Zhou Xuanji, hand over the Tianxia map. You will not be able to escape. The purple-robed man shouted loudly. His name was Zhu Hanlong, and his cultivation base was at Mahayana Stage 7. He was ranked 39th in the Northern Wilderness Top 100, and his name shook the entire region. The cultivators behind him were all excited. Tianxia map. Hearing these 3 words, they were moved. Humph. You're courting death. Lin Changa's cold snort was heard. Then, a beam of sword aura that was 1,000 feet long broke through the sea of clouds and charged toward them. The purple-robed man raised his palm and slapped it down. A huge tiger head appeared out of thin air and shattered the sword chi. As soon as he retracted his palm, the tiger head turned into smoke and dissipated. Lin Changa flew over and Ning Zifeng followed him. The 2 of them frowned slightly when they saw so many cultivators. Skyfall was in the territory of the demons. If Jihuang Demon Lord knew how so many experts had rushed over, he would definitely take action. Could it be that they had already colluded with Jihuang Demon Lord? The 2 of them were not afraid. Instead, they were eager to try. Let's compete and see who can kill more? Ning Zifeng raised his brows and asked provocatively. Lin Changa snorted and said, Let's compete then. Without another word, the 2 of them raised their swords and charged forward. A great battle immediately broke out. At the top of the mountain, Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating. Daoya Old Man walked up to him and said, Be careful. With a sweep of his divine consciousness, he could clearly see the lineup below. In the entire human race, there wasn't a single sacred ground that had so many spirit refinement cultivators. In other words, these people came from various forces and joined forces to seize the Tianxia map. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and frowned. What will come will come. However, he was not afraid. Besides Lin Changa and Ning Zifeng, there was also Fenyu Dragon King, which was enough to defend against the next wave of attacks. He stood up, looked at Xian Xianghua and asked, Hey, how are your injuries? This old demonic woman was a great tribulation scattered immortal. Even if he was injured, he was not someone a Mahayana cultivator could threaten. It's all right. It's not a problem to deal with these minions. Xian Xianghua replied without opening her eyes. She was as domineering as ever. As expected of the dragon's proud flower. Can you find the mastermind? Zhou Xuanji asked Daoya Old Man. After he killed the 5th and 8th in the world, those who dared to make trouble for him would definitely be even more powerful. He first thought of Jihuang Demon Lord. Daoya Old Man closed his eyes and pinched his fingers together to calculate. After a while, he opened his eyes and frowned. There is demonic aura. Other than Jihuang Demon Lord, there shouldn't be any other demon that dares to target you. Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin and began thinking. Why didn't Jihuang Demon Lord do it himself? Could it be that he wanted to test his strength? No matter what, a bitter battle was coming. He immediately sent a telepathic message to Xiao Jinghong, who was at the foot of the mountain, and asked him to gather all the disciples in case they were ambushed. Boom, boom, boom. Under the sea of clouds came the sound of explosions one after another, and one could faintly hear the battle cries of cultivators. Zhou Xuanji observed the battle with his mind. Lin Changa and Ning Zifeng were surrounded by 3 great realization cultivators and were at a disadvantage. But from the looks of it, they could still hold on for a while. It was a good opportunity for them to temper themselves. When they could no longer hold on, Fenyu Dragon King would take action. Meanwhile, 10,000 miles away, Jihuang Demon Lord stood on the peak of a mountain and looked into the distance. From here he could vaguely see Skyfall's silhouette. Behind him, an old demon wearing a Taoist robe stood in human form. He had a head of white hair and a kind face. If not for the bull tail on his back, others might mistake him for an immortal. Sovereign, what are you afraid of? The old demon in the Taoist robe asked. As the 2nd in the world, was there a need to be afraid of the 5th? This was not Jihuang Demon Lord's style. Why would I be afraid? I only want to lure him out before suppressing him. Jihuang Demon Lord snorted coldly. Although Zhou Xuanji killed Huangquan Drake King, it was not a threat to him. He was confident that he could kill Huangquan Drake King after all. But he was indeed a little afraid. With the Tianxia map and Xian Xianghua who would dare to charge forward. He was not a nether ghost who had multiple lives. It was strange that a nether ghost with multiple lives died immediately. There must be something wrong. Fadox, how is Daoya Old Man's divination compared to yours? Jihuang Demon Lord asked suddenly. Almost every major faction had someone who was proficient in divination and divination. Only by doing so could they avoid disasters and develop in the long run. Of course not as good as me. The old demon in the Taoist robe, who was called Fate Ox, replied arrogantly. Among the demons, his divination technique was the most powerful. He had contributed a lot to Jihuang Demon Lord's progress. Or else, with Jihuang Demon Lord's personality, how could he have grown to where he was today? Without him he would have died long ago. This was also why Jihuang Demon Lord valued him so much. I have heard that although a Qilin appeared when Zhou Xuanji was born, his lifespan was short. If not for Daoya old man changing his fate, he would have died long ago. Now no one can divine Zhou Xuanji's fate. Tell me, what fate did Daoya old man change for him? Jihuang Demon Lord looked straight ahead and asked slowly. The Qianxia map and the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique were at Skyfall. He could not wait to crush Skyfall with a punch. Fate Ox was stunned and fell into deep thought with a frown. He could not answer this question. He knew how to change fate too, but he could not change Zhou Xuanji's fate. Jihuang Demon Lord did not speak anymore, and the two demons fell into silence. Sometime later, a domineering dragon roar came from Skyfall. The new Dragon King had joined the battle. His participation changed the situation straight away. Damn. Why isn't Jihuang Demon Lord attacking? The purple-robed man cursed with gritted teeth. Blood was flowing from his face and he looked a little pathetic. The other two great realization cultivators were also in a miserable state. They were severely injured. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng were panting as they stared at him fiercely. The domineering Finyu Dragon King stood between them. Scorching lava flowed all over his body, which frightened the cultivators so much that they backed off. If you continue to be stubborn, I will eat you. Finyu Dragon King roared furiously. His voice swept up a powerful gale, which shook the forest below like a tsunami in a green ocean. The cultivators were furious too, but they did not dare to go against Finyu Dragon King's aura. Humph, I want to see if you can eat them. At this moment, Jihuang Demon Lord's cold laughter came. His voice shook the heavens and earth, and it was even more domineering than Finyu Dragon King's. He came walking in the air with Fate Ox behind him. Seeing him coming, Finyu Dragon King's expression changed drastically. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng's eyelids twitched violently too. Second in the world. Great tribulation scattered immortal. Jihuang Demon Lord looked up at Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji, the Qianxia map is not something you can have. If you hand over the Qianxia map, I can consider sparing your life, he said with a mocking smile. After that, he pressed down with his right hand. Before Finyu Dragon King could react, he felt a formless giant mountain smashing into his body. He fell into the forest, sweeping up a cloud of dust, and the ground shook violently. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 274. Dragon King. Impossible. Ning Zifeng and Lin Chang'e exclaimed. The new Dragon King was a 9th-stage demon. He was defeated by Jihuang Demon Lord in an instant. Isn't this too exaggerated? The human cultivators were also shocked. The strength of the demon clan's sovereign was beyond their expectations. This kind of strength made people uneasy. If Jihuang Demon Lord obtained the Qianxia map, would he let them go? Their eyes flickered and their hearts began to sway. Zhou Xuanji, if you still don't come out, your 2 sword slaves will die. Jihuang Demon Lord mocked. Right after he spoke, Zhou Xuanji flew over through the clouds and stopped in front of Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng. He was dressed in white, and he held the ancient god sword and the sky-extinguishing sword in his hands. His expression was calm and he did not seem nervous at all. If you want the Qianxia map, why go through so much trouble? You can just look for me. Could it be that you want to share the Qianxia map with them and comprehend the Great Tao together? Zhou Xuanji asked with a faint smile. In his heart, he was thinking about how to deal with Jihuang Demon Lord. It was already so difficult to defeat Huangquan Drake King, let alone Jihuang Demon Lord. Emperor Hanlin had yet to awaken, and the ancient god sword needed 3 years to summon the soul of a powerhouse. The only thing he could rely on was the Hades god-slaying formation. Share the Qianxia map? The cultivators' hearts raced as they subconsciously looked at Jihuang Demon Lord. There were too many legends about the Qianxia map. It was said that the Qianxia map contained a peerless technique. It was said that the Qianxia map contained a huge amount of wealth. It was said that the Qianxia map contained an elixir that could instantly turn one into a sage. They had gone through so much trouble to get here, not just to help Jihuang Demon Lord. Why should I share what I want with others? Jihuang Demon Lord mocked. He could tell that Zhou Xuanji was trying to sow discord, but he did not care. He waved his left hand through the air, and a massive black claw appeared out of thin air, sending thousands of cultivators flying with blood gushing from their mouths. Only 3 Grand Ascension cultivators managed to evade the attack. Jihuang Demon Lord, what are you doing? Are you trying to break the contract? The purple-robed man bellowed furiously. The massive black claw had killed several hundred leaving Aperture Realm cultivators in an instant. How could he not feel a pang in his heart? Of course it was mostly fear. Jihuang Demon Lord said in disdain, "A bunch of ants dare to negotiate with me? Have you forgotten that this is a time of war between the 2 races? No one will say anything even if I kill you traitors of the human race." The purple-robed man's expression changed, and he immediately turned to flee. Shoo! A black spear formed by demonic chi pierced through his chest, stopping him in his tracks. Then he turned into a dried corpse at a speed visible to the naked eye. His soul screamed as it was absorbed by the black spear. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng broke out in cold sweat. Zhou Xuanji was expressionless, but he was sweating in his heart. This guy was even crueler than Huangquan Drake King. The other 2 Grand Ascension cultivators did not manage to escape either and perished one after the other. Jihuang Demon Lord did not stop but strolled toward Zhou Xuanji. Seeing this, he immediately took out all the divine swords. "All of you retreat to the mountain." Zhou Xuanji stared at Jihuang Demon Lord and said coldly. Lin Chang'e and Zhang Xian didn't try to be brave and left quickly. "That's more like it. There's no need for others to disturb the matters between me and you." Jihuang Demon Lord laughed maniacally, his expression somewhat deranged. It was as though he could already see the scene of him obtaining the Tianxia map. "Jihuang Demon Lord, you ignored the war between the 2 races and came to snatch the Tianxia map. Do you really think you can defeat Yang Di with the Tianxia map? I'm afraid that before you become powerful, Yang Di will have already conquered the northern wilderness region and exterminated the demon race. By then you will have no place to stay." Zhou Xuanji mocked. The World Fool Sword was above his head, and Jihuang Demon Lord was already within 1,000 meters of him. Jihuang Demon Lord stopped and said with a deep voice with a frown, "You think I'm you? I don't know how to use the Tianxia map after obtaining it." Hearing Zhou Xuanji mention Yang Di, he was infuriated. "Are you sure? You have never used the Tianxia map. Even if I give it to you, it will take time for you to make the Tianxia map recognize you as its owner again. Why don't we work together and kill Yang Di first, then I will give you the Tianxia map. By then you will be the top cultivator and I will be the second. Isn't it a win-win situation?" Zhou Xuanji stopped smiling and looked serious. He prayed in his heart. "Wisdom subduing legendary sword, please show me your power." Jihuang Demon Lord heard him and fell into deep thought, frowning even more. What he wanted the most was not the Tianxia map but the top cultivator in the world. Zhou Xuanji's words moved him. "Sovereign, what are you thinking about?" Fate Bull cried out. He kept his distance from Jihuang Demon Lord and Zhou Xuanji within 1,000 meters, so he was not affected by the World Fool Sword. He felt that it was strange. If it was the usual Jihuang Demon Lord, he would have attacked straight away. Why would he talk so much nonsense? He's thinking about the top cultivator in the world. Do you understand? When your master is thinking, who gave you the right to interrupt? Zhou Xuanji glanced at Fate Bull and shouted furiously. Fate Bull was so furious that he snorted and said with a deep voice, "Noisy brat, you will die today." "Don't try to deceive." He stopped before he could finish his sentence. Because Jihuang Demon Lord was staring at him with the corner of his eyes. He was covered in cold sweat immediately. He knew that he had crossed the line. Jihuang Demon Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji again and said with a murderous aura, "Brat, today, you have to hand over the Tianxia map even if you don't want to." After that, he raised his right hand, and a long black spear appeared in his hand. The tip of the spear was like the head of a dragon, hideous and horrifying. Strands of black demonic chi wrapped around the spear. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. The effect of lowering one's intellect was not higher than his desire for the Tianxia map. "Stop!" A violent cry came. Before he could finish, a beam of light came from the horizon and landed in front of Zhou Xuanji. As the light faded, a domineering figure appeared. It was Jiang Wudi, the third in the world, the second in the human race. He stared at Jihuang Demon Lord with a dignified face and said, "Demon Lord, Zhou Xuanji is the husband of my descendant. How can I let you attack him?" Zhou Xuanji was astonished. This old brat was trying so hard to rope him in? "Jiang Wudi, I know who you are. Very well. Today I will kill you here and eliminate a great threat for the demon race." Jihuang Demon Lord said coldly. He was furious when he saw Jiang Wudi. Jiang Wudi heard him and laughed condescendingly. "Let's see who kills who." Boom, he charged straight at Jihuang Demon Lord. The two powerful cultivators turned into two beams of light and clashed violently. They flew into the sky and dove into the ground. They were so fast that Zhou Xuanji could not keep up with them. On the peak of Skyfall, Xian Xianghua looked confused and mumbled, "Why is this brat so hot-tempered? It doesn't seem like him." In her understanding, although Jiang Wudi was powerful, he was a coward. He would hide from Jihuang Demon Lord if he could. Xuanji and Jiang Shui love each other after all. The Qianxia map is in Zhou Xuanji's hands and he can benefit from it. Daoya old man analyzed, but he felt that his guess was a little far-fetched. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 275. Boom. 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 Jihuang Demon Lord and Jiang Wudi fought fiercely. Each of their spells was ever-changing, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Jiang Wudi's spells leaned towards physical cultivation. Every punch and kick had the power to destroy the world. Jihuang Demon Lord was shrouded in demonic qi. The black spear in his hand pierced out continuously. Numerous demons appeared and surrounded Jiang Wudi like an army. When they were far away from Zhou Xuanji, they regained their senses. What's going on? I'm here to force him to retreat. Why did I fight with him? Jiang Wudi regretted in his heart. Why did I get carried away all of a sudden? He came to cheer for Jihuang Demon Lord. With him, Xian Xianghua and Zhou Xuanji, he thought that Jihuang Demon Lord would retreat. But he did not expect him to fight with Jihuang Demon Lord the moment they met. Now that things had come to this, he could not care less about regret. He could only fight with all his might. Jihuang Demon Lord also sensed that something was wrong. His target was Zhou Xuanji. How could he fight with Jiang Wudi? Where did Jiang Wudi get the courage to fight with him? It must be because of the Qianxia map that made him lose his mind and go crazy. At the thought of this, Jihuang Demon Lord's eyes turned ferocious. He decided to kill Jiang Wudi with all his might. The battle between the human and demon became even more violent. Mountains were crushed one after another, and the sea of clouds billowed like a flood dragon. A horrifying pressure swept across the heavens and the earth, causing countless demons to flee in fear. Zhou Xuanji looked into the distance. From his perspective, he could see continuous explosions at the horizon. Dust covered the sky, and two silhouettes collided like auroras. The scene was terrifying. It was like a battle between immortals that could destroy the world. He sighed in amazement. Was this the power of a great tribulation scattered immortal? He wondered if he could unleash such destructive power when he broke through to the great realization stage. It was so tempting. Brat, the sovereign did not have time to deal with you. Let me deal with you. Fate Bull Demon's voice came from behind him. Before he could finish, Zhou Xuanji had already teleported away with the 8-step sword lunge. After countless battles, he had a keen sense for sneak attacks. Heavenly lightning surrounded his body, and his skin turned golden. He stared at Fate Bull Demon and laughed coldly. You are only at the great realization stage. You want to kill me? Seeing his expression, Fate Bull Demon's heart jolted. He did not panic. He quickly created many clones that filled the sky, dazzling everyone's eyes. Zhou Xuanji, you should not exist in this world and the Qianxia map should not belong to you. Take out the Qianxia map now. Thousands of doppelgangers threatened in unison. Their voices converged together, causing one to be in a trance. Zhou Xuanji said expressionlessly, shouldn't exist in this world? Xiu. Xiu. Swoosh. All the divine swords attacked one after another, bringing with them dragon-shaped sword chi that wreaked havoc in the sky. The clones were pierced through by the divine swords one after another, and it was difficult to tell which one was the true body. Zhou Xuanji was prepared to do it himself. At this moment he suddenly felt a formless energy wrap around his limbs. Wisps of black qi appeared out of thin air and wrapped around his hands and feet, rendering him immobile. This guy, what kind of spell is this? He widened his eyes in shock. He felt that he couldn't activate his spirit energy as if it was sealed. At this time, Fate Ox appeared behind him again. Zhou Xuanji, you are too young and have little experience. I hope you can remember this lesson in your next life. Fate Bull laughed coldly and reached for the back of Zhou Xuanji's neck. Smack. A jade-like hand swung across his face, directly smashing his head into smithereens. It was Xian Xianghua. She pulled back her right hand and Fate Bull's soul fell into her hand. Instant kill. The black qi that wrapped around Zhou Xuanji's limbs disappeared. Xian, aren't you severely injured? Fate Bull cried out in fear. Could this old demonic woman be faking it? At the thought of this, his soul shuddered uncontrollably. He roared in his heart, Sovereign, run quickly. Not even Jihuang Demon Lord could resist Xian Xianghua and Jiang Wudi at their peak. Xian Xianghua's eyes were cold. She clenched her right hand and crushed Fate Bull's soul. Zhou Xuanji's spirit energy recovered. He turned around and said to Xian Xianghua, "Thank you." He almost fell into Fate Bull's trap. What kind of spell is that? He did not catch it at all. Be careful in the future. He's using a divine ability that imperceptibly seals the enemy's spiritual energy. I'm not sure what kind of divine ability it is, but I've seen similar divine abilities before. In the face of absolute strength, it's nothing. Xian Xianghua replied calmly, which made Zhou Xuanji sigh. Such a show-off. The two looked into the distance. Jihuang Demon Lord and Jiang Wudi were still fighting intensely. They were so fast that Zhou Xuanji could not tell who had the upper hand. Have you recovered from your injuries? Zhou Xuanji asked. He had a feeling that Jiang Wudi would lose. Because Jihuang Demon Lord's demonic qi was just too powerful. It surged endlessly and enveloped the heavens and the earth. No. Xian Xianghua replied straightforwardly. If she had recovered, why would she stay here to watch the show? Zhou Xuanji shook his head with a smile. On the other side, Jihuang Demon Lord noticed Fate Bull's death too, and waves of shock surged in his heart. Xian Xianghua has recovered from her injuries? If so, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous to him if the battle continued. He immediately turned around and fled, no longer fighting. Jiang Wudi was no match for Jihuang Demon Lord, so he naturally would not pursue him. He heaved a sigh of relief and thought to himself, I must not be so reckless in the future. After the thought, he turned around and flew towards Skyfall. At the peak of Skyfall, in the stone pavilion, Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Wudi sat facing each other. Xian Xianghua and Daoya Old Man sat on either side, while Jiang Shui sat on the wooden railing behind Zhou Xuanji, avoiding Jiang Wudi's gaze. Thank you for your help, sir. Daoya Old Man raised his wine cup and smiled. Jiang Wudi also raised his wine cup and shook his head with a smile. You're too kind. We are a family. A family? You're really shameless. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes. But if not for Jiang Wudi's help, it would have been very troublesome. He understood Jiang Wudi's intention, which was to rope him in. I have no interest in the Tianxia map. My cultivation has reached its limit after all, and I can't go any further. But you are different. With the Tianxia map you can create a new era. I came to help you because I hope to leave the Jiang clan a way out. Jiang Wudi looked at Zhou Xuanji and said solemnly, on the path of cultivation, one could not continuously grow more powerful just by cultivating. Everyone had their own limit. Most people could not even reach inner pellet. It was not because they did not work hard but because that was their fate. Jiang Wudi was the same as Daoya Old Man. He had already reached his limit and could no longer grow more powerful. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, no matter what, you helped me today. If the Jiang clan is in danger in the future, I will help. Jiang Wudi heard him and smiled in pleasant surprise. Xian Xianghua snorted coldly and said, don't be fooled by him. He searched for the sea-freezing stone personally because he wants to go overseas to find new serendipity. This means that his ambition is not dead yet. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 276. Of course I will look for opportunities, but I won't set my eyes on the Tianxia map. I don't deserve such a treasure. Even if I get it, it will bring trouble to the Jiang clan. Jiang Wudi explained as cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Xian Xianghua's impression of him was simply too poor, and this was not a good thing. Zhou Xuanji ignored Xian Xianghua and asked, can you tell me what serendipity you are looking for overseas? There's someone from overseas in Skyfall. If you can convince me, we can work together in the future. Jiang Wudi's eyes widened when he heard that. People from overseas? He anxiously asked, where is he? Xian Xianghua glanced at him and he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly retracted his attitude. Jiang Wudi immediately told him the reason. To tell you the truth, I accidentally entered a cave and found the words left behind by a great tribulation scattered celestial. He came from overseas and his name was Dao Hongqian. He claimed that there were countless dynasties, and even the great Fate dynasty above the ocean. This person obtained a heaven and earth stone by chance. Legend has it that the heaven and earth stone contains the power of heaven and earth. After this was exposed, he was chased by countless enemies. In the end, he hid the heaven and earth stone on a small island overseas and came to the northern wilderness region himself. However, he attracted a powerful enemy. The demonic emperor bloodline. Jiang Wudi's expression turned solemn as he spoke. Demonic emperor bloodline? What the hell was that? Zhou Xuanji looked confused. Xian Xianghua frowned and said, the bloodline of the demonic emperor. Legend has it that this race only has a single descendant, and a demonic emperor will appear in every generation. Once awakened, they will possess invincible power. They are bloodthirsty by nature and even they cannot control themselves. Up until now, the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline hasn't appeared in 15,000 years. The last descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline fought against the evil king and the hegemon sword emperor alone. At that time, 20 great tribulations scattered immortals gathered together before they managed to kill him. In that battle, aside from the evil king and the hegemon sword emperor, everyone else died. Since then, the northern wilderness region's fate has declined. Until today, the number of great tribulation scattered immortals is far less than before. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. No wonder people often said that this era was not as good as 10,000 years ago. After the hegemon sword emperor, there had never been a true great emperor. He wasn't sure what a great emperor was. A true great emperor wasn't as simple as claiming to be. It was said that he needed the approval of the heavens and earth, and that he needed to be imbued with fate energy. Chapter 277. 30 years old. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. Time does not keep anyone. In the blink of an eye, I'm already 30 years old. Fortunately, this was the northern wilderness region. He was still young, still a teenager. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained bronze flaming sword. Bronze? I'm already 30 years old. Why didn't you give me a surprise? Zhou Xuanji was a little angry, and the disciples before him were all shocked. Why did the Grand Teacher's face suddenly turn grim? Gold, flying leaf sword, amethyst, soul sword. In the end, the sword spirit did not give him a surprise. Now, the amethyst legendary sword could no longer bring him excitement. The amethyst legendary sword could not threaten a great tribulation scattered immortal. It was the same for the glorious gold legendary sword. Only a heavenly soul legendary sword or a higher grade legendary sword could make him happy. Especially in such a situation, he longed for an intimidating spirit legendary sword. Heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, God slaying, Armageddon. He was looking forward to it. Okay, disperse and continue your training. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said. Xiao Jinghong, Ning Zifeng, and the others immediately left with the second-generation disciples. He took a deep breath. He could not place his hopes on the legendary swords. His own power was more important. It was better to focus on cultivating the world Buddha art. The information of the 3 legendary swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, flaming sword grade, bronze description. In ancient times, a cultivator traveled the world alone. Every time he extinguished his fire, he would use this sword. After extinguishing the fire 10,000 times, the sword transformed into a bronze legendary sword. Sword name, flying leaf sword grade, gold description. This sword has absolute control over leaves. It is extremely destructive and can sense the spirits of all plants. Sword name, soul sword grade, amethyst description. Soul origin is an extremely powerful soul. Once released, this sword will summon an army of soul origin. Not bad. Zhou Xuanji took out the 3 legendary swords and familiarized himself with them before continuing his cultivation. On the other side, the second-generation disciples were walking on the mountain path. Su Yang asked Xiao Jinghong carefully, Revered teacher, how could the Grand Teacher be in a bad mood? Beixiao Wangjian stared at him, which scared him so much that he shrunk his neck. Ning Zifeng chuckled and said, Sunlight Emperor has come out and is leading the way. Master is naturally unwilling to be left out. He must have comprehended something. When everyone heard this, they felt that it made sense. Everyone thought that Zhou Xuanji would become the top cultivator in the future. Facing the #1 expert in the world, his mood was naturally different. Cultivate well. 3 months later, the demon army that the demons left in the human race were all defeated. In the 4th month, Jihuang Demon Lord retreated, and so did the entire demon army. This even caused the demon race's territory to shrink. In the 6th month, Yang Di descended to the Shanghai Ziggurat and announced to the world that he invited the 8 sanctums, 7 empires and top-tier factions to gather at Duantian Cliff. It was a year later. Rumors spread all over the world. Many said that Yang Di wanted to dominate the human race alone. Because of his powerful performance, the voices of opposition were far less than those of support. Across the entire human race, Yang Di's reputation was unprecedented. Compared to him, Zhou Xuanji was like comparing a grain of rice to the bright moon. At the top of Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji frowned deeply. Daoya Old Man, Xian Xianghua, Xiao Jinghong and the others gathered here. The letter that Zhao Tsongjin received was an invitation from the Shanghai Ziggurat, inviting the master of Skyfall to Duantian Cliff. Now, everyone in the world knew that Zhou Xuanji was in Skyfall. He would establish his own sect sooner or later, and he was already a faction. Humph! Yang Di is so ambitious. No, I must go to the surrounding mountains to spread the news and gather the Tanhua sect's disciples. Xian Xianghua snorted coldly and disappeared on the spot. Zhou Xuanji ignored her and fell into deep thought. Should he go to Duantian Cliff? You cannot go personally. Although Yang Di is the top cultivator in the world, no one knows his true nature. What if he wants to kill you? The entire world thinks that as long as you continue to grow, you will become the top cultivator in the world. Moreover, you have the Tianxia map. Daoya old man reminded him with a grave expression. He had encountered many things in his life, and even his beloved disciple had died. He had a deep understanding of people's hearts. Lin Chang'e said, "Let me go. I represent Skyfall. Yang Di can't kill me, right? As long as he's not stupid." If Lin Chang'e was killed, Yang Di's reputation would plummet. Moreover, there was another faction behind him, the Hegemon Sword Sect. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 278. That's right. Master can't go there personally. Huang Lianxing nodded. Zhou Xuanji's situation now was even more dangerous than before. Tianxia map. Even if Sunlight Emperor didn't kill him, what about the lords of other forces? After all, this was the territory of the demon race. Zhou Xuanji thought for a while and decided not to be reckless. He nodded and said, "Then I will leave this matter to you, Chang'e." Lin Chang'e was no ordinary person. He was a famous genius in the northern wilderness region. "Little Gu, don't embarrass our Skyfall," said Xiaogu. Ning Zifeng patted Lin Chang'e's face and instructed him with an irritating expression. Lin Chang'e became angry and scolded, "Don't call me that." The two of them started bickering again. Zhou Xuanji was still thinking about Duantian Cliff. With Sunlight Emperor's strength, he could have just unified the world. Why did he have to gather all the heroes in the world? In the northern wilderness region, the strong ruled. Most importantly, he had chosen the Heaven's End Cliff. Back then, Xian Xianghua was besieged by the heroes of the world at the Heaven's End Cliff. In this 1 year, focus on cultivating the sky-dominating divine sword. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Zhou Xuanji said to Lin Chang'e. Hearing this, Lin Chang'e was overjoyed. Ever since Zhou Xuanji had taught him the sky-dominating divine sword, he had not personally taught him much. He was proud of his talent, so he naturally didn't have the face to take the initiative to speak. This was not a loss. After giving some instructions, Zhou Xuanji dismissed everyone and continued to cultivate. On the peak of the mountain, dressed in a purple dress, Xian Xianghua stood proudly in the cold wind. The veil on her face was not affected by the wind. She gazed into the distance as though she was waiting for something. 5 black shadows appeared out of thin air in front of him, floating like smoke and dust. Their figures fluctuated and their faces could not be seen. "Greetings, Sect Master." 5 different voices sounded at the same time. Xian Xianghua's eyes were cold as she said, "Yang Di wants to take over the world. Tanhua sect can't be depressed anymore. Summon the 36 demon chiefs and save the Thousand Hands demon from the underworld path. I want to conquer the world." "Yes." The 5 demonic shadows answered in unison and disappeared into thin air. Xian Xianghua looked towards the north and muttered, "I shouldn't have let you go back then." After saying this, she turned and flew back to Skyfall. 4 months later. That night, Zhou Xuanji finally broke through to Spirit Refinement Level 6. He had to rely on various treasures, the Tianxia map and the rich spiritual qi in Skyfall to break through quickly. Ordinary spirit refinement cultivators would spend thousands of years to break through a small realm. Spending 100 years would be considered very fast. Not only that, Zhou Xuanji's understanding of world reincarnation had reached a critical point. Somehow he felt that something was missing. Just a little. Once he comprehended it, he would be able to cultivate world reincarnation. The amount of spiritual energy required for world reincarnation was already sufficient. He had even practiced the mental cultivation method countless times. Just one step away. Sometimes you can only reap the rewards if you let go. Xian Xianghua's voice suddenly entered his ears. He opened his eyes and saw Xian Xianghua standing beside him, looking at the starry sky. He sat cross-legged and had to look up at her. He didn't say anything, instead pondering over the meaning of her words. "When I cultivated the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique, I encountered many cultivation shackles, whether it was in terms of techniques, magical spells, or divine abilities. Often when you long for a goal too much, you will lose yourself. Xian Xianghua said with deep meaning. She had observed Zhou Xuanji for a long time. This boy always looked like he was in a dilemma. She did not want to care too much. After all, everyone had their own path of cultivation. However, Jiang Shui felt heartache and could not help but find her, hoping that she could help. On Skyfall, Xian Xianghua's cultivation was the highest. Even in the northern wilderness region, she was at the peak of cultivation. Lost? Zhou Xuanji frowned and sank into deep thought again. Xian Xianghua lightly patted his head and harumphed, "Little husband, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand?" Zhou Xuanji felt quite surprised. He suddenly came to a realization. So that's how it is. World reincarnation, everything is reincarnation. From nothing to something, from something to nothing, from not knowing to memorizing, from memorizing to forgetting. Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself, his eyes becoming brighter. Xian Xianghua was attracted by his words. He did not notice that he had entered a state of enlightenment. World reincarnation could completely reflect the power of an enemy. Apart from this, there were other effects, but he would only understand them after truly cultivating them. At this moment he finally understood. He had practiced world reincarnation circulation technique countless times, and it had almost become an instinct of his body. At the last step, he should forget to let his body control world reincarnation. Let his soul control world reincarnation. And not his memories. Billowing spirit chi gathered toward him, forming a hurricane. Everyone on the mountain peak looked over. Jiang Shui looked pleasantly surprised, while Daoya old man stroked his long beard and smiled, while the others sighed in amazement. Master broke through again, Zhao Tsongjian said excitedly. Zhao Tsongjian said excitedly. Could it be another powerful sword technique? Xian Xianghua looked at Zhou Xuanji with a strange expression. This boy, her heart trembled. Even though she wanted to enlighten Zhou Xuanji, she did not expect him to gain enlightenment so quickly. And he had broken through directly. This kind of talent and comprehension. Zhou Xuanji had completely comprehended world reincarnation, and the spirit energy in his body went through a qualitative change. He could feel a strange energy lingering around him, changing his physical body and spiritual energy. This feeling was very mysterious. He could not explain it clearly. However, he suddenly remembered what Daoya old man had said. There were many things in the world that the naked eye and divine sense could not capture, such as fate and fate, or the heavenly law. Only these things could explain what he was feeling. The onlooker sees the game more clearly than the player involved. What a world reincarnation. Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement in his heart. The world Buddha art was a top-notch divine art. How could anyone bear to forget it after learning it? Even if he wanted to, it would be difficult. If not for his innate talent of multitasking, it would be difficult for him to do so in such a short time. Of course, he could also seal his memories with spells, but that would obstruct his physical memories. Spirit chi flowed into his body wildly, and his spirit energy grew tremendously during the transformation process. A purple meteor streaked across the starry sky and disappeared in an instant. There seemed to be a meteor just now, the little black snake said in surprise. But it was a pity that no one paid attention to it because everyone's attention was on Zhou Xuanji. Time ticked by. A full 6 hours passed. Zhou Xuanji broke through to spirit refinement level 7 straight away. At the same time, he finally learned world reincarnation and cultivated it into a divine ability. A faintly discernible and strange pattern appeared on his forehead. At first glance, it looked like a purple 8 trigrams diagram. Boom. He felt an explosion in his mind and his senses transformed. His perception of his surroundings became dozens of times stronger. He could even sense other people's spirit energy. The most powerful one was Xian Xianghua. Her spirit energy was like a blazing sun, burning fiercely. Before her, the spirit energy of others was so insignificant. Analyze that the sword owner has learned a divine ability. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained intimidating spirit. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 279. After comprehending the world reincarnation divine ability, Zhou Xuanji took an hour to get used to his new senses. His spirit energy had gone through a great transformation in both quantity and quality. Putting aside world reincarnation, he was like a completely different person compared to before. If he used world reincarnation, he could instantly kill his previous self. He once again regained the confidence to look down on the world. Ever since he saw Jihuang Demon Lord's power and knew that Jihuang Demon Lord was easily defeated by Yang Di, he had always felt pressured. Even if he did not want to admit it, it was indeed there. Would someone as powerful as Yang Di really ignore the Tianxia map? Zhou Xuanji slowly opened his eyes, and a brilliant light flashed in them. Wait, when I comprehended world reincarnation, there seemed to be two more legendary swords. He suddenly remembered something. Following this, the information of the two legendary swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment Grade, Intimidating Spirit Description, a legendary sword born when the world was created. It contains a trace of the might of the heavenly law and is extremely destructive. With the martial punishment, it can greatly increase the strength of the sword owner's body. Evil demons will not be able to get close to it, and it cannot be used by those below the Great Realization stage. Sword name, Spring Water Sword Grade, Silver Description, a sword that has undergone a qualitative change after being soaked in 1,000-year-old spring water. When fighting in water, it is like a fish in water. Intimidating Spirit Legendary Sword. Fudge. Is this real? Zhou Xuanji immediately jumped up from the ground as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He clenched his fists and breathed heavily. He was so excited that his body trembled. Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment. It contained a trace of the might of the heavenly law. However, the requirement for this sword was the Great Realization stage, which made him feel a little disappointed. This showed how powerful Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment was. He had already reached Spirit Refinement Level 7 and was very close to the Great Realization stage. Now that he had cultivated the World Buddha art to Level 2, his internalization of Qi would be much faster than before. Breaking through to the Great Realization stage would not be too far away. Thinking about that, he felt even more joyful. At that moment, the others came up to him. Revered teacher, you broke through? Master, what were you comprehending just then? Xuanji, are you all right? Haha, as expected from my grand disciple. Amazing. Master, was it a sword technique? Everyone was incredibly excited. Yang Di had appeared out of nowhere and dominated the heavens and earth. Under such circumstances, the stronger Zhou Xuanji was, the happier they would be. Chapter 288. At the top of Skyfall. Boom, 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 a series of explosions came from a gigantic cauldron. Zhou Xuanji, who was half naked, sat in the cauldron. Massive amounts of spirit qi gathered above the cauldron, forming a vortex that was 9 meters wide. Daoya Old Man stood at the side, stroking his long beard and smiling. He was amazed in his heart. How powerful was this brat's body? He felt that Zhou Xuanji would break through to the Great Realization stage soon. At this moment, Haotian Boar King appeared behind him suddenly. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating, Haotian Boar King did not dare to disturb him. He told Daoya Old Man about the information he had gathered and left quickly. Great Fate Empire. What ambition. Daoya Old Man mumbled to himself with a serious expression. Once Yang Di succeeded, he would possess the human race's fate, and the fate of the human race would be in his hands. How could anyone feel at ease? Right now no one could stop Yang Di. There was an insurmountable gap between Yang Di's power and the second in the world. However, to create a great fate empire was not something that could be done in a day. It would take decades or even centuries. He looked at Zhou Xuanji. How powerful would Zhou Xuanji be in decades? Time continued to pass. After 10 days and 10 nights, Zhou Xuanji finally flew out of the cauldron. His body was golden and was surrounded by lightning. He gave off a powerful aura. With a thought, he exited golden invincible form. He used his spirit energy to evaporate the medicinal liquid on his body before walking up to Jiang Shui. He asked her to use a water spell to bathe him and wipe his body. How do you feel? Jiang Shui asked. Her actions were gentle and she wiped him carefully. Zhou Xuanji muttered, it's all right, but I'm still far from breaking through. The spirit energy required for the Great Realization stage is too much. Actually, he understood that he was just special. He cultivated in both energy and physique, and he cultivated the World Buddha art. As such, the amount of spirit energy required for each stage far exceeded that of others. It's all right. There's no hurry now. Jiang Shui smiled sweetly. She then told Zhou Xuanji about Yang Di creating a great fate empire, which made Zhou Xuanji narrow his eyes. Creating a great fate empire? This guy had Fate Emperor River and wanted to gather the fate of the northern wilderness region. Why did he feel like something was wrong? Could it be that he wanted to absorb all the karmic luck in the world to strengthen himself? He had once heard that there were cultivation techniques or divine abilities in this world that could absorb destiny. If a person's destiny was sucked dry, they would die very quickly. Without luck, it was just like the movie Final Destination in his previous life. An unexpected disaster could cause one to choke to death just by drinking water. From ancient times until now, no one could calculate how many voids there were. A long time ago, the empires of the various sea regions had started planning to invade the northern wilderness region and occupy the land resources. However, the void was unstable and they could not invade on a large scale. Moreover, the sanctums of the northern wilderness region were guarding the borders of the sea regions, so the sea region empires could not invade the northern wilderness region. In the past, there were many heroes and geniuses in the northern wilderness region. Ever since the Hegemon Sword Emperor ascended, the northern wilderness region had fallen into desolation. Tens of thousands of years ago, there were several people like Sunlight Emperor in every era, even in the double digits. It was said that the northern wilderness region was originally much larger, but because of the battles between the strong, many lands were sunk into the sea. 500 years ago, someone from the Dongxing Empire accidentally entered the northern wilderness region. That person was loyal and devoted, and since then he had been gathering information for the Dongxing Empire. Lu Tiange thought that the northern wilderness region had fallen into desolation, so he searched for the void and entered it. But reality gave him a heavy blow. He cursed in his heart. It's all that guy's fault. How did he gather information? TSK. This guy's mood is the same as mine. He thought that he could do whatever he wanted after coming to the northern wilderness region, but... Ning Zifeng laughed mercilessly, which made Lu Tiange's veins bulge on his forehead. We are all from the sea region. Why make things difficult for each other? Zhou Xuanji asked a few more questions and Lu Tiange answered them honestly. There were empires in every sea region, which meant that there were hundreds of empires overseas. However, the population of these empires was far less than the empires in the northern wilderness region. After he finished asking, he asked Lu Tiange to find a place to stay at the waist of the mountain. Zhou Xuanji asked Lin Changge and Ning Zifeng to keep a close eye on him. This person was a great tribulation-scattered immortal after all, and he had many tricks up his sleeves. Seems like this world is more exciting than we imagined. Daoya old man sighed in amazement. After hearing Lu Tiange's words, he suddenly felt that the northern wilderness region was very small. A bunch of natives from overseas dares to encroach on the northern wilderness region? What a fool's dream. Xian Xianghua snorted coldly. The others sighed in amazement as well. Zhou Xuanji was thinking about another question. Who set up the barrier around the northern wilderness region? After Lu Tiange joined Skyfall, he ended up as Zhang Quanglan. Every few days, Zhou Xuanji would find him and absorb all the spirit energy in his body.